Hello and welcome to a presentation of How Communication Has Changed, an interview. This is going to be done by me, Nicole Easley. I'm going to be the narrator, and I was also the interviewer for this presentation. My dad was the interviewee, so therefore any references to content will be from him and his perspective of how communication has changed. Thank you for listening, and we'll continue on to the next slide. Now, a little background about this presentation. I interviewed my dad, who is 50 plus. I asked him various questions about his experience with how communication has changed. For instance, we talked about television, from the tube TV all the way to the nice LCD TVs and 4K TVs that we have now. We talked about movies, from him seeing it with his friends to now seeing it on demand at home. And we talked about various music. For instance, owning his first record player to now having music streamed to his phone. Differences in television. There were many differences. For instance, that sometimes the TV would stop working, so we had to actually fix the tubes that were in the back of the television. Unlike now, where you have a pixelation that is dead, the whole entire screen would go dead. By midnight, if you were watching live television, the feed would stop, you would see the American flag and the Pledge of Allegiance or the national anthem playing, and then a black screen. And there were only a few channels available, unlike now where there's thousands and even different streaming channels too. Sad moments in television. Back in the 1960s, television was broadcasted live throughout the day and partially throughout the night. Therefore, if you saw a television show, it was being broadcasted live during that time. That also means any breaking news reports were happening live too. Due to television being live, my dad saw the breaking news report of John F. Kennedy's assassination in Dallas, Texas. He remembers seeing the motorcade driving away and people crying and screaming in the streets, asking what was happening. During that time, there was a lot of confusion and there was a lot of miscommunication about what was happening. He says it was a very sad time because he remembers seeing the newspaper the next day of John F. Kennedy not making it. Seeing movies. This is a much happier topic, as my dad went to see movies with his friends a lot. He remembers going to midnight premieres to see the movie before anyone else would, so they wouldn't ruin the ending. The film he was most excited to see was Star Wars 4: A New Hope. There was a lot of excitement around this movie because the CGI was new, even though when we look at it now, it's pretty old, and the storyline was supposed to be fantastic. It was a whole brand new sci-fi film series that hasn't been done before, at least with George Lucas. How he listened to music. My dad loves music, and he loved owning a bunch of records, cassettes, 8-tracks, all that good stuff. He also owned his own record player, and his first album that he remembers purchasing on his own was Led Zeppelin. He said that Led Zeppelin at the time was just up and coming, and they were really popular. He also owned various cassettes and 8-tracks, and when I asked him about if there was any parental advisory on albums, he said he doesn't even remember any parental advisory or his parents telling him to not purchase a certain album because it may have had bad words in it or bad manners, any of that stuff. Music devices. The record player my dad owned was in his room. He would keep it there so he can listen to his music in peace and not be bothered by his brothers or sisters. Even his parents, too. 8-tracks were really popular during the time, and there were some records that only had 1 or 2 songs on them. He remembers going to the record store to pick up albums, and occasionally those 1 or 2 song albums, because they were very rare and they were hard to find. He would have to go to the record store maybe twice a week or 3 times a week to find out what new music was coming out or if they had those limited edition albums. Conclusion. Communication has changed over time by the way we receive it and give it. For instance, in the 1960s, you would have to physically call someone on a phone that was attached to your landline, that was attached to the wall, but now we can just pick up our cell phone, send a text, or even FaceTime someone. Technology has made it so much easier for us to find programs, music, and movies that we may have missed. For instance, if we have a song stuck in our head, we can just look up the song lyrics, and we'll find the artist, album, and even the way we can stream it to our phone. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope you have a great day.